What's good, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. One Piece is on break this week, but we got some new info. We have the SBS for Volume 109. Now, Volume 109 is set to release, I think, in Japan on the 4th July. So we're not going to be seeing it here for a little bit, but we're going to go over some of the stuff that we got from that volume. It's already been translated. We got all of it from Piece and Archer on Twitter. If you guys don't know their handles, if you guys haven't seen their names before, that's kind of crazy because they're really big in the One Piece community. But check them out, they got all the info there. First off, the cover. Now, you know what this channel is. You know who we stand on this channel. So to see the cover, this is definitely going to be a volume that I own, like without a doubt. It's such a good volume. It's got Kuma, it's got Bonnie. I mean, it's got, everyone else has got Vegapunk, Cinnamorough, Kizaru, but the Kuma, Bonnie in the center, and then you have Luffy as Nika at top. It's such a well done cover, and it's going to look so good, like in physical form. So I'm definitely gonna get this when it comes out. Just take a look at this. It's so good. It's so good. Moving on to the actual SBS questions. Now, the first one, we actually get clarification on who the warlord that Ace beat is. Now, his name is Hanafuda, which is a card game. Fun fact, it's what Nintendo pretty much started out with. That was their very, very base beginning, was that they were, a card game manufacturer with Hanafuda. And then they grew into the Nintendo we know now from just that. But his name is Hanafuda, and then we have what he looks like here. And he's got a pretty cool design. Honestly, he reminds me a little bit of Kid with his design, like from the hands, like the pants, it screams Kid at like the waist down. Once you get higher up, it starts to feel a little bit different. But this is who Ace beat. Now, if the timeline is correct, this should have been 4 years before the story right now, because this is mentioned in chapter 1100. They're talking about appointing Kuma as a warlord, and at this time I believe Bonnie is 8 years old, and at the present time she's 12. So this should be 4 years back. Now, I'm not entirely sure of Zephyr's timeline, considering it's non-canon technically and all that stuff, but if Zephyr happened, I think it's like a 5-year, 6-year gap between like when Zephyr left the Marines and then switched and did all that. That I think this would be the warlord that they appointed, who ended up taking off Zephyr's arm and killing his crew. And it also makes more sense because it looks like he has a sickle with a chain as a weapon. So I could see him being the type to cut off arms or cut off limbs. So I think that kind of brings that full circle. Anyway, cool design. And he's designed well enough to, like, it's not a sketch, it's like an actual design. I'm wondering if Oda at some point wanted to include him in the story, or he really just felt the need to, go all out in this design. I don't think it makes sense for him to just go all out in SBS. So I feel like the design was in the tuck, and then he was like, all right, we got a question for it. I'll bring it up. Otherwise, it may have shown up in like a river card or some other material, but he was like, okay, we brought it up here, let's talk about it. Now, an interesting fact about Hanafuda is that he was collecting ancient Zoan fruits. It's unknown if he had a fruit or not, just that he was collecting them, which I don't know too much about what he would do with that. There's no mention of like him having a crew, but it gives very Kaido vibes, where it's like, maybe he was trying to amass an army of strong Zoan users. And honestly, I feel like this would have been a good spot for Kaido to start. But I guess Kaido wanted the manufactured fruits because of the ease of access. I think that was a big deal. Anyway, it's a cool design. I really dig it. I like the sickle and chain with the like spiked ball at the end. That's dope. The next one is about Fujitora, and I think we've gotten a lot of Fujitora's like overall info through like SBS and River Card, right? Because we got his, I think, Devil Fruit. We got that through, I'm pretty sure we got that through River Card, actually. The Zushi no Me. So now we're getting info on his sword, and his sword is a 12 grade supreme. So he's got one of the top swords in the series, which is crazy because I think the only other people we know that have that kind of sword are Whitebeard, Roger, Gandhi, Mihawk, and now it would include Fujitora. And that's really surprising because I never figured Fujitora would be the one to have a supreme grade sword, considering he doesn't use the sword as a sword. He uses it almost similar to how Law uses it, in that it's an extension of his fruit more than it is like him being a swordsman. So the fact that he has a supreme grade is kind of crazy. In the same vein, it makes sense because he is a top contender for power, so I guess he would have to have a strong sword. Now, so that leaves us with 7 spots for the rest of them. I mean, we still speculate that Shanks has a supreme grade. So I mean, it's very possible that it's just 6 spots still open for who could have supreme grade weapons. I hear talk of Shiryu. Now, I don't think because he has a named sword, and for some reason I'm thinking of Tashi's sword, which is named after Rain, but people are saying he could have a supreme grade as well. I don't really believe it, considering I think Shiryu's kind of trash, but we'll see as the story progresses. I'm sure we're going to get, I think of all the grades, we'll probably get all of the 12. Like, we might not get the 21 or the 50, but I feel like we're going to end up seeing all of the 12, whether it's like through the story or it's through SBS favorite card, some way, shape, or form, we'll get that information. Next up, Shiki. Who would have thought we were still talking about Shiki in 2024, but we are. And interestingly enough, it's a canon question, because we often have issues about, like, are the movies canon? Generally, it's shown that the characters and the lore behind the characters is canon, but the current story is not. So like for Zephyr, the character Zephyr would be canon, but the story about him blowing up the endpoints would not. For Shiki, the character and the fruit are technically canon based on this question here, but the events of Strong World are not. Now, what's interesting about this is that Oda has a rule that he doesn't want to give someone the power to freely maneuver through the air, like almost like a Superman version of flying and levitation, which I think that's interesting in the way that, so it's not just about flying and floating, because we have plenty of characters who have the ability to fly, whether it be a natural version of their fruit or something they've created, because we have like Pell who can fly, but we have like Doflamingo who flies by using strings in the clouds. So we have characters that can fly, like we have Marco and we have Luffy, but I think the idea is just that like a character that just flies in the same way that like Superman or Omni-Man, any of the heroes fly. It's just like they just lift into the air and they can move freely in that space. I think that's what he's saying he doesn't want to create. But considering the float fruit, that's kind of what he did create. Now, because it's technically, a canon character, that kind of made its way into the story. Because Oda was like, I don't want anybody to have that kind of ability, so I don't put it in the original work. Since that's a movie, it went through, but now that Shiki is like a canon character and he's been referenced several times, that has to come to play, because you can't just erase what happened in the movie for the sake of the original work, which is weird to say, but it's true. I mean, you have an entire movie based on the original work that's already been out. You can't just say, okay, well, that movie's not, ignore that. Because, I mean, Oda worked on that. Oda's worked on the last 4 movies, I want to say. I know he worked on Strong World, Z, and Stampede. I don't remember if he worked on Gold. But yeah, so Shiki is not supposed to have that fruit, and we likely won't see anyone else with that type of ability. Next up, we get the reveal of the Empress from 2 generations ago who died from love sickness. And this is where like the if you've been on and on Twitter for a little bit, you've already seen the meme of this is a matter of reading comprehension from Oda. And that's going to be circulating for a little bit now. But basically, this is Oda explaining the timeline of the Empresses. And you can see we have Gloriosa, we have Shaki, we have Hancock at the end, but we have Toritoma. She is the Empress between Shaki and Hancock. And she died from sickness. So the thing with, I think, Gloriosa, Shaki, and Hancock is that they experienced love sickness at some point, but they essentially left to be with the person they were in love with. That's the idea, at least. With the only successful one I think we're seeing here is Shaki. But the thing about Toritoma is that a lot of people are speculating that the person that he had the love sickness for, Dragon, and essentially he's Luffy's mom. And if you've been in the One Piece community, you know the Luffy's mom theories run deep, they run true, and they run strong. I'm honestly surprised that people were so willing to call this Luffy's mom, even though they're so gung-ho about the crocodile theory. But I like the idea, honestly. Oda did say that he might at some point, like, not necessarily introduce Luffy's mom to the story, but draw her at the very least. So it's like, this could be a way of being like, okay, I'll give you what you want, but you're not gonna know it. It could also just be a random person. Now, this is another instance of a character that is well drawn. Like, I think with a lot of the SBSs, they're sketches, right? You know, we don't get too in depth with things just because they're SBSs, they're quick. But this is the second time, like with Hanafuda in the first one and Toritoma now, where it's a fully drawn character. Like, this is a character model, and if they were to appear in the story, this is what they would look like. You know, this isn't a sketch of them, this is just straight up them. So I'm wondering if, again, this is a character that Oda wanted to show in the story at some point, whether it be the original work, whether it be a favorite card, you know, some way, shape, or form, he wanted to show this character, and he chose SBS. I think her design's cool. I think she looks a lot like Boa. Actually, let me rephrase that. She doesn't look a lot like Boa. She's similar to Boa in that she has like the same style. The facial structure looks a lot different from all the other Empresses. But like, she even has the earrings, which I don't know that they're... It's like, you can see the image here, you can see, you know, Gloriosa, you see Shaki. Now, when you look at Boa and Toritoma, they have the same earrings. Now, why they do, I'm not entirely sure, considering Boa specifically is the Hime Hime. So she's the snake princess. As far as I know, Gloriosa, Shaki, Toritoma were not notably the snake princesses, they were just the empress. So I'd be curious to know why she has those same earrings. If anything, it would point to her being Boa's biological mother over anything else. But I would have to look into the exact whereabouts of how Boa moved from the island she was on to Celestial Dragons to the Isle of Women. I'm pretty sure she started on the Isle of Women. I think she was taken from the Isle of Women to the Celestial Dragons and then brought back when Gloriosa found them. But I would have to like look into that a little bit deeper. I'm not entirely sure. Next, so Oda tends to choose like serious questions in which he wants to give pieces of the story, and then he chooses joke questions. This one, someone asked him to draw a man's butt, and Oda said, "No, I will not. No, thank you. Next question." Quick, short, to the point. The next question is about CP9 and how they end up getting promoted to CP0. And we get part of that because we see through the cover story what happens after they fail, how they move through the system, and then how they kind of solve an issue. It doesn't necessarily show that they make it to CP0, But we just see that they're taking care of business as defunct members of CP9. And essentially what happened is by finding out the events of the cover story, they were reinstated and then added to CP0. Apparently, Spandam's dad is on his sick bed, so they gave Spandine's job, which is why he's a part of CP0 as well. But we all know he's basically just a figurehead, doesn't really do a whole lot. Another CP9 question. Alpha, the member of CP8 that was watching over Bonnie, is actually related to Khalifa. And that's Khalifa's younger sister. And they're both related to, they're both the daughters of Lasky. And if I'm not mistaken, Lasky was one of these CP agents that was in O'Hara. He was with Spandine when they essentially went to O'Hara to do the Buster Call. So we've got two connections. We got Spandine and we got Lasky, and then their kids essentially joined CP9 as Spandam and Khalifa, and then CP8 as Alpha. So just a nice little family tree lore there. The next one's about Kuma's fruit and its abilities to send people places. And we get the information that in order for Kuma to send someone somewhere, he has to have been there himself, which we kind of speculated at this point. We had the idea that in order to send him to a specific place, Kuma has to know about it. I think one of the prevailing theories was that the Bible was actually an atlas, so that Kuma could actually look up places, but I think it's just the places that he's at, or the places that he's been to. The Bible may be more or less just a Bible. And considering how much Kuma has traveled in his time, he just has like all these places on deck that he can send people to. It's really cool. And then we get a question about Bonnie's fruit. One of the things that Bonnie's fruit kind of does that confuses me is that it doesn't fully follow the naming scheme. So she has the age fruit, which is age manipulation, but her fruit goes so far beyond that in some aspects that, you know, just calling it an age fruit, it feels like you're underselling what this fruit can do. But the question itself is that, will the effects last forever? So can she keep herself, like, essentially, can she be immortal with this fruit? And the answer is no. On living things, the power of the fruit eventually fades, so the effect becomes undone over time, whether or not she takes it off. So say like she becomes 60 years old and then she like reverts herself back to 20. She can only do that for so long before her body will naturally revert back to 60 years old. And the final question is about the kids who threw rocks at Kuma initially because they thought he was a monster. And I guess these are kids who not only had a crush on Genny, but ended up becoming part of Bonnie's crew. Now, at the beginning, they were trash people because they were picking on Kuma, but essentially they became allies to Bonnie. I don't super care about Bonnie's crew, but it is cool to get lore. I think they more or less are non-factors at this point. They're looking a lot like Law's crew did at the beginning of Wano, where it's like, why are they even here? But as they came more into Wano, they became a bit more useful. I'm wondering if Bonnie's crew is going to do the same. But we kind of get into a weird timeline of what happened with Bonnie. And I guess this kind of explains why she hasn't been with her crew for so long. Basically, since she got captured by Akainu, which was 2 years ago, so pre-time skip, that when she got captured, she was separated from the entire crew. And essentially she escaped, made her moves, tried to, you know, go to Kuma, this, that, and the other, and eventually ended up on Egghead. Still hasn't been up with the crew yet. So the crew is in the tuck somewhere. I don't know where they're at. I'm assuming they're going to show up at some point and like reunite with Bonnie. And that's if Bonnie doesn't end up coming along with us or, you know, doing something with the S-Bear. Essentially, wherever they end up, it'll be a nice reunion. And I think there's some other like joke SBS stuff, like the reason why Mars is always standing is because he always forgets his homework and they're punishing him, which is hilarious because Mars is the one who's like putting in work at Egghead right now, despite the rest of them, excluding Gandhi, basically doing nothing. Yeah, here he is, forgets his homework, so he gets punished out of all of them. And then there's a review for Vega Cola, which is just that it's basically it's like an ad for cola. That's all it really is. Now it'd be funny if we do see some kind of interaction with Frankie and Vega Cola, but of course it's just a joke, so we'll see where it goes. And that covers the SBS. So, like a lot of times the SBS will give us information, but it doesn't give us like as pertinent story information. This one felt pretty packed with good story stuff, so I thought I'd talk about it a little bit. Again, if you haven't seen any of this, check out PewPeace, check out Artor. They have all this stuff on their Twitters. I'm sure Artor is going to have the SBS on Library of Horror at some point, so check it out there as well. But that's going to be it. Like, comment, subscribe, smash the like button. Let me know what you guys think down below, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.